Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining us tonight, whether it's morning or afternoon. Here it is the evening. Thank you all for joining us today. So we're going to pick up on page LP7B. LP7B on Procedure 8. Procedure 8. It says, conclude by encouraging the class to diligently teach their children how to manage anger as means of developing self-control. Remind them that consistent teaching and role modeling of appropriate anger management techniques will result in children who behave harmlessly even when angered. Notice it has that consistent teaching and that role modeling, which, as we want to really make clear to the parents as we teach them, is that role modeling is how they're going to teach, is how the children are going to learn. It's through the examples is how they're going to learn. So by us constantly teaching them through our example and in everyday interactions. All right, so we have completed Chapter 7. Give yourself a round of applause. You've done very well. Before we move on to lesson plan number 8, though, I really want everyone to keep in mind that we've covered 7 chapters so far. We've learned a lot of techniques. We've learned a lot of how to deal with anger management. And there might be some things that we are not all experts at yet. You know, as we go through the chapters, we learn another thing. And we might feel down at times because we haven't become perfect at everything. But use what you have progressed at as stepping stones to become better. Yes, we fall short in some places, but look at the things that you've done well at, the things that you have improved upon, and use that to help you to become a better person, a better parent, to really be able to encourage other people. So let's go ahead and go to lesson plan 8, teaching children about respect. The purpose and objective. And the purpose and objective we always refer to as the goal of the lesson. So students will learn about respect for yourself and others, and how to teach their children by their example. Notice respect for yourself, then others, and then how you will teach this to your children by their example. The materials you'll need are the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program Parenting Manual, pencils, and a pen. So we're going to go to the first one. So it says, briefly review Lesson 7, Teaching Anger Management, by asking the following questions. What are some indications that anger management is needed? Now, I really want you to think about in your own personal situations and things that we've covered in class. What are some indications that anger management is needed? And some of them might be violently or destructively expressing anger, exposure to violent entertainment, and aggression when angry. Now notice that it has, in order to display this, they have to be taught it, which means it comes from somewhere. It's a learned behavior. So let's go ahead and go to, we cover this in page 51, paragraph 1, and I want to go back there and read that real quick. Page 51, paragraph 1. It says, another important aspect of developing self-control in your child is in helping him learn how to manage anger. Anger management is the way in which we control anger so it does not turn into rage and become harmful or destructive to self, others, possessions, or the environment. And we covered in the self-control book that anger is a secondary emotion, which means it stems from something. So we always want to look at what is causing me to feel anger. What is that trigger point? And our anger management tips will stop it before it becomes worse and turns it into rage. Down at the bottom it says, anytime you watch or allow your children to watch a violent movie, TV show, or play a violent video game, you and they are becoming desensitized to aggression and violence. Now I want you to keep that in mind because we're going to really cover that in this chapter as well. Back on LP 8A, B. It says, what steps can you take when dealing with an angry, rude, or disrespectful child? And the answer, it says here, is determine what you are feeling and evaluate the child's needs. And something I really, really like about this is that we're not just realizing that the child is angry. But if you go to page 53 and 54, at the bottom of page 53, it talks about, let's take this one step at a time. And how even though we become frustrated, we must also practice self-control. And on page 54, it talks about, what am I feeling? Now, raise your hand if you like to always think about what you're feeling. Not all the time. Sometimes you'll be like, do you really have to go in this place? No, I really don't want to feel how I'm feeling right now. But in order to solve these huge problems or things that can be huge at that moment, we have to get to the root of the problem. What am I feeling? And then we get to, what does this child need? And in the previous classes, they covered how whenever you get in these situations where you're upset and the child is upset, that sometimes it's best to just both to calm down. I think of that situation as you flicking the light switch on and off, yet you haven't put a light bulb in. Are you going to get any light? No, because that connection isn't there. So when you're trying to communicate with someone and you're just flicking that light switch on and off, you're going to get absolutely nowhere. But when you calm yourself down and you're able to talk it out and you're both willing to listen, there's one thing that I personally have tried with my siblings, and it's whenever I'm giving them a correction or something, there can be some times where they want to make their point known. So what I've tried to do lately is, okay, it's my time to speak whenever you want, and then whenever I'm done speaking, okay, now it's your time to speak. So that way they're aware that, yes, I'm talking, but you're also going to have your opportunity to speak. And that way we're both willing to listen to each other. Okay, so we can turn back to page LP8A. And for B, that's pages 53 and 54. Now, see, it says, name some of the tips for teaching anger management skills to a child. Now, some of them can be patient, teach as well as correct, be consistent. And another point we talked about is just getting to the point, because the attention span is very small. So you want to make it known what is wrong, and then you can ask the child, how would you fix this? So if you go to page 54 through 58, we talked about these tips, and I'll just read through them real quick. So number 1 is keep your cool. Number 2, be patient. Number 3, take the time to teach as well as correct. Number 4, active listening. Number 5, don't expect perfect results right away. Number 6, talk to your child about his or her behavior and how you can plan to help him demonstrate proper conduct. So right there it shows you that it's a two-way thing. You have to be working together. Going to page 56, number 7, institute a calm down time. And I know we talk about this for children, but also for us as authority figures, we need a calm down time too. Like sometimes we need to sit down and really be able to think about what's going on. What can I do to be able to help this child through this situation, or help me? What help do I need to get to be able to help my family? Number 8, remember to use rules and reward system. The teacher that covered this really went over whenever you have rules to write them down so the children can see them, because rules shouldn't change just upon this is what I'm feeling today, this is the rule today. That's where things get jumbled up, and that's where it becomes where children don't know, how am I supposed to behave at this time, because yesterday I wasn't supposed to do this, but today I'm allowed to. So having those rules where they can see them makes it consistent in their mind. Number 9, process the experience. Page 57, number 10, be creative when giving out consequences. And number 11, be consistent. And that is, I think, one of the words we hear so much through the Peaceful Solution is to be consistent. So that completes procedure 1. Now we're back on LP8A, and we're reading procedure 2, where it says, inform class that they will learn what respect is, how to have respect for themselves and others, and how to respect their children. Really, I underlined that because it's really important that we realize that this, even though this is a parenting manual, it's also teaching the parents to respect themselves as well. If a parent doesn't find brushing your teeth important, will their children? No, not unless they go to school and a teacher says, brushing your teeth is important, and they have that other influence somewhere else. But home is really where the children spend a lot of time, especially these days where they're doing virtual classrooms. So whatever is going on at home is really shaping the child into what they're going to be. And this is why, as parents and teachers, we must really fine-tune ourselves and take these concepts and try to implement them into our lives so we can better be a role model to the people that we are, our children, the people that we are around. Okay, so respect means to show honor, esteem, care, and concern for others, property, environment, and ourselves. I'll read that again. Respect is to show honor, esteem, care, and concern for others, property, the environment, and ourselves. Now, respect is not something that is earned. It's something that must be shown all times. Everything, every object, a pencil, a person, everything deserves to be shown that respect. And I really thought about the concept of respect must be earned. If we're all earning something, will we ever get it? No, because I'm expecting you to show it to me, and we're all expecting something from each other, but no one's getting anything in return. And because of that, we have a society that we have today where everyone is waiting for the person to be a better person, whenever it starts with you. You start with changing yourself, and then that ripples out. Everyone working on themselves is a little piece of the world becoming a little better. So let's go ahead and read procedure 3. It says, have volunteers read the first 2 paragraphs on page 61. Then discuss. Focus on the fact that children are exhibiting disrespectful behaviors at increasingly younger ages. Choose volunteers to read and discuss the last 2 paragraphs on page 61. Tell students that disrespect manifests itself in crime and many social ills in our society. So one thing we're really focusing on is that disrespect is shown, but in society today it's being shown at a younger age. So let's go ahead and turn to page 61. Page 61, and the title is Lesson 8, Teaching Children About Respect. Another important positive character trait that every parent must have is respect. Respect is to show honor, esteem, care, and concern for others, property, the environment, ourselves, and all life. Then notice how it has more than just showing care and concern to people, because sometimes when you ask people what is respect, they can say, well, that depends on who you ask, or it's just showing care and concern to other people. Care and concern is a big thing, but also the honor, esteem towards not just yourself and others, but everything that surrounds you, it gives it a little bit more deeper meaning. So like self-control, respect is a pillar of positive moral character, and therefore vital to the life of each individual and to our society as a whole. When members of a family demonstrate respect for each other, there is a mutual concern and care for all members. And mutual means held in common two or more parties. So mutual is something that you or someone else have or multiple people have. And when you see mutual respect in a family and between people, it's real care. Now, as we're going through this, you're going to find out that there are going to be conflicts. A family where the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program is diligently being practiced does not mean that there's not going to be conflicts. It's a work in progress, which means there's going to be conflicts. What is the situation, or the sum of it, is that every person is trying their best in that situation. How you respond in that situation is what determines if you are practicing the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program or not. So it says theoretically, it should be simple to outline what is a respectful conduct between parents and children. Now, I want you to think, what is a respectful conduct? A respectful conduct is always asking before you take things, but accepting that answer when you ask for those things. Is looking at someone when they're speaking and paying attention, giving that person the most respect that they deserved. And one thing that I've really been thinking about is, in the Peaceful Solution, we talk about active listening. But have you ever thought about a deaf person? In order for them to communicate, you have to look at them. You have to be patient with them, and you have to sign. And that is the same patience that we would have concerning that person, is the same patience that we should have with other people. Even though we can hear them, give them that full attention. Because in order to, and this is why respect is so important, because in order to have positive interactions, you have to have respect. So going on, it says, theoretically, it should be simple to outline what a respectful conduct between parents and children, but the reality is that we live in a society where disrespect is already condoned. Blurring the lines between what is acceptable behavior and even with acceptable and unacceptable behavior even within families. And I was thinking about, how is disrespect condoned in society today? And have you ever thought about whenever people get upset and maybe they're told that they shouldn't have done something, some go on social media or they find a friend and have someone validate their feelings. What they did was right. Now, just because someone agrees with you, does that mean that your behavior was right? No, it doesn't make it right at all. Yes, there might have been actions wrong on both parts, but how did we respond in that situation? Whenever we make decisions, it's based upon our choices. And it's very important that we do not make choices or say things whenever all of our emotions are taking over us, because then we end up saying things that we regret and that we have to apologize for. And this is why we always encourage to stop and think about, how will my emotions, how will my words, how will my actions affect someone else? Because you might say something to someone and do something and you might get over it, but that person takes that baggage and they might carry it with them because they are trying to be able to heal and trying to process whatever that situation, whatever went on in that situation. So as we have our conversations with people and our children, really think about our words and their actions and how they really do affect each and every person. So going on, it says, it is no longer uncommon to hear of children as young as 3 striking their parents and older children refusing to comply with curfew, do chores, or follow other instructions. Nor is it uncommon to hear parents literally cursing their children in public, yanking them by their arms if they're lagging behind, or physically and sexually abusing them behind closed doors. And for those who are in this situation of abuse, we do encourage you to seek help for the proper authority, because abuse is not to be tolerated. It's something that if you are experiencing it, that you reach out to the proper authorities and you continue to do until the situation is handled, until these actions stop. Now, because it is so common in society for curfews, as it says here, for people to not comply with curfews and not to do their chores, there's become sayings as rules are meant to be broken. And these sayings, when they're said over and over, we are dealing with a society that no longer sees value in rules. We do what we're supposed to do because we're in fear of what might occur to us. And as parents, it's really important that we find ways to show our children that these rules are important. It's bigger than not touching the stove because it's hot. It's decisions that as you get older, they're going to affect your life. Whether it is getting into a next career or life or death situation. These decisions are starting off as putting Legos in a box or driving a car into a tree. They get bigger and bigger and bigger. So whenever we instill within our children the right to respect the rules, they will pick up the Legos and the blocks. Not because they won't get candy, but because they realize that these Legos go in here. This is my job. I am a part of this family, and chores are for me to do, and that's how I show respect to my family. So going on to the next paragraph, it says the breakdown of a family unit is only one way disrespect has been manifested in our society. If we evaluate the problems we see in society based on the principles of respect, honor, kindness, and compassion, we can clearly see how the lack of respect has affected all areas of society. The increasing number of domestic violence reports, school bullies, robberies, car thefts, rapes, murders, and overflowing prisons all attest to the fact that as a society, self-respect and respect for others are sorely lacking. Now, what has caused the breakdown in the family units in society today? Now, I encourage you that you write those answers down for yourself, because we've all had different walks of life, or from different walks of life. We've all experienced different things. But one thing that I thought of when I read this was, if things don't work out, the solution a lot of times is to run away. Now, this is not whenever there's disrespect going on in the home that needs to be addressed. This is whenever there are situations that can be solved. Because when you think about running away from a situation, if you haven't dealt with those feelings and emotions, you go to another situation, those emotions are still going to be there. So that's why we should try our best to figure out what's going on. What am I thinking? What am I feeling? How can I address this situation? If I need help, seek help from the people that can help me to be able to find the path that I need to be able to continue on in life and be a better person that I want to be. And another reason that how they've broken down the family is, number one, running away, but number two, treating people how I feel. However I feel is how I'm going to treat you. And that is where you see no care, concern, no respect at all. Because people do have feelings. Each person we're all sensitive in different ways. I'll just say that. We're all sensitive in different ways. So what might seem like a joke to me might really feel like a stab in the heart to you. So our words are something that we carefully think about before we say them. Our actions, our thoughts, everything we carefully think about. All right, so now we're going to go on to parts about domestic violence reports. I looked this up. This was the most recent one I could find. But it says in 1975, an estimated 3.3 million children witnessed domestic violence between 3 and 17. So between 3 and 17, they've witnessed acts of violence. And in 1992, 10 million teenagers were exposed to parental violence each year. And that's from the Resource Center of Domestic Violence .custody children protection. So even before they reach teenage years, even before their mind at 6 has, hardened a little bit, the time that they're still being shaped is when they're being exposed to this violence. And this is why we're seeing at a young age, children are displaying these acts of violence. So going on the bottom, it talks about, it says, as a decline in moral values has greatly contributed to the lack of respect that is now interwoven into the fabric of our society. As parents, our greatest challenge is to raise morally respectful children in a society that is saturated with all the forms of disrespectful behaviors. This vast majority of these behaviors are blatantly displayed for all to see and emulate on TV. Recent studies have proven that the availability and popularity of television make it one of the most powerful sources of negative influence in our society today. Now, because of how far things have come in society today, it's more than just the TV. I am 20, so when I was 5 years old, that is when YouTube came out. YouTube is something that almost every person knows. Every person knows of YouTube because you can find everything on it, not just violence, but you can find everything on it. So it's more not just the TV anymore because there's all these new apps that are coming out that you can have free streaming and all of these things. So one thing I looked up is, because it's talking about violence and how it really affects society today, I looked up why are crime shows so interesting. And between 2019 to 2020, there are 19 crime shows that were on television. So from Vulture.com it says, "We like crime shows because they're full of all the things we're not allowed to do. All the dark corners of the human imagination we shouldn't indulge. All the scariest, most alluring, most sensational kind of behavior we could never do because it'd blow up our regular lives. But it would be more exciting if we did this. Let us play hypotheticals. What if I robbed a bank? What if we were allowed to go through the streets with guns, kicking down doors, and arresting whoever we want? Crime TV can be dark, gritty, silly, and escapist. But it's always interrupting daily lives. Breakfast is boring. We know what it's like. Murder is not boring. TV shows show you something you haven't seen in your life. And that is from Vulture.com. So why do we find these things intriguing? Because it's something that's not going on in our lives. Yet, as we read on page 51, as things continue to be seen, we become desensitized to them. And that's where we see how someone falls and the people around them don't ask, "Are you okay? Can I help you?" Because, in shows or things like that, or in songs, people get up and you see them in another show. And you watch the next show because, that person's in there. When it occurs in real life, though, that person is gone. And when you really impress that in at a young age, that your actions do affect other people. Respect is showing care and concern to all people, no matter if they hurt you or not. And if you are in a situation where someone is hurting you, whether if it's their words or in other ways, go to an authority and seek help. Seek help. But I want to close right here on the note that even though we are all going through our own situations, remember that we have habits and we're trying to help other people with habits overcome those habits, but we can only do our best. So keep up your great work. With this, I'll turn it over to the next speaker.
Hello, everyone. So great to be continuing in the parenting manual with you all today. Let's give her another round of applause. She did a nice job covering her points. So we are continuing here on Procedure 3 in Lesson 8, teaching children about respect. And remember, that's our goal. Our purpose objective is to teach. We will learn about respect for ourselves and others, and also how to teach our children respect, and mostly by our example. That is so very, very important. And before I continue here, I just want to share, we're getting a lot of feedback with the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program, and I had a testimonial come in that I want to share with you all. She said, before the Peaceful Solution, she's in another country, I never knew how to forgive. I wanted someone to hurt people to get a fair share of pain as they have caused people, or get more pain than them. I was holding anger, resentment, and retaliation. This thing cost me. I became bitter, stressed, And I fell into depression sometimes when my expectations are not met. I became suicidal. But I have learned so much from the Peaceful Solution. I am healing and forgiving, and I am striving to be a better person. My goal every day is to become a better person, more than I was yesterday. Isn't that nice? I just thought that was so lovely. That was so beautiful. And when we go back over here now to page 61, see that little box up there on the left side? Respect is like an investment. You get so much more out than you put in, the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program. So when you show honor, care, and concern, respect, high regard for somebody else, you get more out of it because they are going to reflect that back to you as well. And even if they don't, that's okay, because we feel better as individuals when we can show that respect for other people. Okay, so she picked up, we're down like the fourth paragraph down. A decline in moral values has greatly contributed to the lack of respect that is now interwoven into the fabric of our society. A decline in moral values. That's what caused it. That's why people don't value showing respect to one another. They think, oh, it's no big deal. We got this language going. We have this body language going. We can talk this way with our friends. This is how we talk at school. This is what you do on the streets. But it is lacking moral value. There's no value in morality in society anymore. I thought that was a very important point to emphasize. And now this has been interwoven into the fabric of our society. As parents, our greatest challenge is to raise morally respectful children in an environment that is saturated with all forms of disrespectful behavior. It's like trying to swim up a stream. You've got a current going downstream and you're trying to swim up against it. That's a very difficult thing to do. Most people don't succeed at it. But we know with the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program, we do have the tools to succeed. We are turning this around. We are changing the direction of that flow, and that's so important. So it says here, the vast majority of these behaviors are blatantly displayed for all to see and emulate on television. Recent studies have proven that the availability and popularity of television made it one of the most powerful sources of negative influence in our society today. And just think about it. How many, raise your hands if you've ever seen a child sitting in front of a television. Do they look a bit mesmerized? Their eyes are just like glued to the television. You can even have a conversation with them and they don't even hear you. Anybody ever experienced that? There's something about the television, and it has been a powerful influence. This little block down at the bottom there. By the age of 72, the average American would have spent a total of 11 years in front of the TV. That's a lot of years. By the age of 18, the average child would have witnessed over 200,000 acts of violence. And teens have watched 3 to 5 hours of TV each day. They witness about 2,000 sex acts per year. Now, I know television is a big influence, and it has brought that decline in morality, but something today has made it fall even faster. And I have an article here. People are now spending more time on smartphones than they are watching television. I have a little chart here. This author, Andrew Hutchinson, was published in June 7, 2019. According to new research from eMarketer in 2019, for the first time ever, U.S. consumers will spend more time using their mobile devices than watching TV, with smartphone as use dominating that spent time. And they have the chart here that shows from 2014, smartphones weren't as popular, but by you get to 2021, it has exceeded the watching of television. I mean, we've seen this coming for some time, but still, it's a significant shift. As per the report, the average U.S. adult will spend 3 hours, 43 minutes, referenced as 3.43, on mobile devices in 2019, that's per day, just above the 3.35 hours spent on television. Of time spent on mobile, U.S. customers will spend 2.55, almost 3 hours, on smartphones, a 9-minute increase from last year. In 2018, mobile time spent was 3 hours, 35 minutes, with TV time spent at 3.44. So the average consumer is now spending 3 hours on apps versus only 26 minutes in mobile browsers. Listening to digital audio, music, and podcasts primarily is the most common app used, with social network activities coming in second. As noted, the significance of the mobile shift has long been known factor, but it is worth highlighting the point at which the threshold is crossed and we can see consumer habits focus increasingly on their mobile devices as opposed to more communal television experience. Now, raise your hand if you have seen someone on their phone and you're trying to carry on a conversation with them. Is that an easy thing to do? It's even worse than the television. It is absolutely worse than the television. It's like, hello, anybody there? Knock, knock, knock. Anybody there? I'm trying to talk to you. I saw this picture once. I'm sorry I didn't think to grab it, but it was a picture of all these people walking down the street in a city. It was a drawing. And everybody had their shoulders hunched over, and they were all on their devices. Their heads were down, and they were just like sheep walking along the road. And it was very dark, and it was very dreary. So these phones have done something to our minds. They have damaged our ability to have moral value. That is the bottom line. They have damaged our ability to have moral value, where we think disrespect is okay. I don't have to listen to my mom. I'm not about to do what that teacher just told me. And this whole body language goes with it, like, no way I'm talking to you. And they think it's funny. They think it's cute. And you see little children mimicking that. And the children pick it up at such a young age. They think, oh, this is what I do. This is what I'm supposed to do. This is what everybody does. My mommy does it. My daddy does it. Everybody does it. They're on their phones all the time. I can't even have a conversation with them. And now with the situation that we're in today, with COVID pandemic going on, it's gotten so bad that families don't even know what to do all in a home together. Well, before, they'd come home after she was at school, she was at work, everybody was out. They come in for a few minutes. They might find a meal together. They might not. They might just all sit in front of the TV and eat. But now, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you expect me to get along with my mother? You expect me to get along with my children? And they don't know what to do. And so the violence, the aggression, the disrespect is skyrocketing. It's out of control. Society is out of control today. As I said last week, if disrespect were a disease, it would be a pandemic. And it's following right along in the footsteps of what is occurring in society today. So we've got a problem on our hand. And it begins right here. Parents, we have a responsibility, just like that article we read last week about those girls in that Walmart store. You know, it should have never occurred. And the police officers tried to say, parents, wake up, it's your problem. What are you doing at home? What is going on behind closed doors that your children think it is acceptable to come out with a weapon in a store and murder another child? And worst of all, put it on social media, because that's entertainment. You see how disrespect has taken over? It's now acceptable to put out as entertainment. It's you can tell I'm very passionate about this subject. Okay, so we understand now that we have a problem, and we're going to learn how to teach children the opposite direction with showing them how to learn respect. So we're going to jump over to the activity for procedure 4. I'm going to give you a teacher approach to this, okay? Have volunteers form groups to brainstorm various forms of disrespect shown by children to parents and parents to children, because those children learn that disrespect somewhere. It started with the parents showing it first. Allow students to share with the class. Stress that disrespect in any form, you can circle those two words, any form, should never be tolerated, and that we as adults must hold ourselves to the standard we learned based on the positive moral values. And I would underline that sentence because that is so very important. We have to hold ourselves up to that standard, and then we have to help our children know the value of holding themselves up to that standard. If they don't see value in it, they're not going to do it. You know how hard it is to get a child to do something if they don't value it, right? So you have to educate them. You have to teach them the benefit of it. And children forget that they're going to grow up and become an adult one day. And when they do that, they think anything goes. I'm a child. I can do anything I want. But one day they do grow up. And then you have the issue like those girls in Walmart, where now at 13 years old, they have a severe consequence for their actions. They will live with that record the rest of their life. You think that girl might regret that? I think with a little education and a little afterthought now, thinking about what she did, she could really regret that. And as she turns 23, she could regret it even more. Because now you live with your choices. They have to stay with you. So we have to teach them to pay attention to their choices now, not after the fact. We want forethought in our Peaceful Solution program. We want to teach our children, we said it last time, to be thinking ahead of time rather than reacting with our emotions. That's so easy to do. Anybody can fall into that. Look at a 2-year-old. They'll do it every time. But as you get older, you have to learn to think about it first. Stop and think and ask yourself, do I really want the consequences? What could the consequences be? And then we really can suffer for it. So these we must teach to our children regardless of the age. And we do it mostly by example again, okay? So now we're going to go over to Procedure 5. We're on LP 8B. Choose a volunteer to read the first paragraph on page 62. Have parents reflect and share on whether the media influenced their choices when they were younger. And everybody can say yes. Television has been around long enough now that everybody's been influenced by it. Discuss the main points on pages 62 and 63. Draw a vertical line on the board, creating 2 columns. Label one side then and another side now. Have students brainstorm ways in which society is different today from just 50 years ago, showing how what is considered acceptable behavior today was unacceptable then. Write their findings on the board. So we got a lot here. We have many. I wrote some notes on the side here. Your students are going to answer music, movies, education, fashion, television shows, sports, and social time. Those are all decent answers that you're going to get from them. And we can see with time going on, we didn't have the internet when a lot of us here in this room were growing up, or those listening. But when internet came on the stage here, that really, it took a little time, but then it really started turning the tide. It really started opening the door more than television shows to some very disturbing behaviors. And families started feeling the effects of that because people would get themselves in front of the internet. You got this big screen right here. And again, the same thing as what the television did, having a conversation, and they're glued. And just pay attention. How many people around you get glued to their phones, get glued to their screens, and you can't, we might even find we do it. And you can't carry on a conversation. I remember the first time I saw texting come up, I saw 2 people sitting right opposite from each other. They were doing a duty together and they were right there next to each other. And instead of talking, they were texting one another. I had to walk up to them and I say, are you texting one another? Yeah. It was so new, it was so exciting, something different. They just wanted to sit there and text one another. They say that it's even affecting our ability to communicate today. Do you ever have yourself texting in your mind? You give an answer and you write it out? That means you're probably spending too much time on your phone. And some people get very busy with their phones, with work or whatever, but we have to weigh if it's something that is really needful, a priority, or if it's something we can set down. A lot of families can just put those phones down. This is, I call it an Amish hour, and no phones are allowed to be used. Don't even answer them. Sometimes I'll tell people, I just took an Amish hour. And sometimes we need that. It's healthy for us. It really is. It's as healthy as going out and getting sunshine. Okay, so let's turn over to page 62. We're in procedure 5 here at the top. As parents, we can no longer afford to be desensitized to the disrespect in the world around us. And we know that desensitization means you become numb to it. It doesn't bother you. Again, you don't value it. It's not important. We need to become aware of how it is affecting our children and us. To become truly effective in our role as parents, we must acknowledge, pay attention to the dangers of allowing our children to watch objectionable material on television, internet, social media, read about it in books and magazines, and see it on the internet. We should never underestimate the power of negative influences on the moral development of our children. Remember, parents have the most important job on the planet. We are responsible for raising, nurturing, and teaching the next generation. With so much depending upon our diligence, we cannot afford to be negligent in our duties. It is a parent's responsibility to guard what their children see, hear, and experience to the very best of our ability. And you know what that is? That's true respect. When a parent can guard their children that much, then they are showing that true respect. And this is through your actions as well as their actions. And you know, a lot of parents can say, oh, sure, go watch a movie, but do they sit down and watch it with them? And stop the movie and say, wait, did you just see what that person did? That was very disrespectful. Did you hear that answer back to that authority? Is that appropriate? How many parents will take the time to do that? Or listening to a song, stop the song and say, did you just hear what that song said? What could that do in your mind? And have a discussion about it. Without that education, goes in, and it might find a nice place to stay. And then it starts coming out in the behavior. So, how can parents teach their children to develop the character trait of respect? This is a very important page. Children are taught to develop the character trait of respect when parents value it as a positive character trait in their own lives, and then consistently promote, model, and teach it to their children. There's that word consistency again. So I had to go back, of course, and find C is for consistency. Right here. This is out of the responsibility unit on page 79. C is for consistent. To be consistent is to think and act in the same manner all the time. That's a challenge. And yes, we all can fall short. We have our emotions. We don't keep them in check sometimes, and then next thing you know, you weren't consistent. But that's okay. You just dust yourself off, and you pick yourself up, and you say, I'm going to try again next time. And that's, parents, when a wonderful time to go back to your child and say, please forgive me. It's okay to apologize to a child and say, I lost my self-control. Please forgive me. And let them know it sincerely hurt you to even set that example before them. Consistency is another important trait in the maintaining a responsible, and I put respectful character. For example, if you start your homework and chores at the same time every day, you are being consistent. If you do them only when you have nothing else to do, then you're not being consistent. You are consistent only if you display the same characteristics at every opportunity presented to you. And again, the key word in that is value. You have to value being consistent. You have to value the desire to demonstrate to other people, anyone around you, students, it can be family, it can be coworkers, it can be anyone, that I want to be consistent in showing you respect. Because it might not even mean anything to the other person. Think about that. It might not mean anything to the other person because they don't value it. But you know what? When you put your head down on the pillow, you're going to be saying, I was respectful in every situation today. I am so glad I could maintain my self-control enough to be respectful, even when that so-and-so just lost it on me. Right? That's the challenge, but we can do it then, and we are doing it. So just how important is it to be consistent? Well, consider what it would be like if your parents or your guardians only fed you once in a while. Or if you didn't know when you would get your next meal. Sadly, there are many children who face this reality and live every day not knowing if or when they will be cared for. Or what if you are the boss of a company and your employees either came at work late or not at all? How would your company function? Would you keep those employees or hire new ones? Many things in life depend on consistent actions and interactions. When your behavior is both positive and consistent, you are building a responsible and respectful character. And isn't that worth trying for? Do you think you can value that and work towards consistency? I think it's a great thing to work towards. Okay, so let's come back over here now in the parenting manual on page 62. Children love to mimic and imitate their parents. You can see this in their pretend play. Mommy takes care of the baby. Daddy knows how to mow the lawn or fix the fence. What your children see you doing and the kind of lifestyle you live will influence the choices your children will make as they grow older. Their choices to show respect to themselves and others will depend primarily upon the emphasis you place on it and anybody else you allow around that child. So be careful and guard who your children spend time with, especially when they're little. Because I can hear children, I work with children sometimes, and those little children, 2, 3 years old, a teacher will be saying something, and the child repeats word for word, every single time. And it goes into them, and they just mimic it. That's what they do. So imagine your life is in full view of your children, except for very private moments. Think of it as though they were in a theater watching you on the screen. In the way you conduct yourself and the way you want your children to behave, is that the way you want to act? Is this the way you treat others and the way you want them to be treated? So if we think about this, what would our screen look like? How would our interactions sound? If we had cameras, coming to all of our homes, okay, now peaceful solution moment, we're going to film this family. Let's see how they do. All right, now let's try this family over here. Look, they really practiced a peaceful solution. They stopped, everybody apologized, they got the peaceful solution out, and they did great, right? So this is a great eye-opener here. All of these things need to be considered if we want to send the right messages to our children. And we don't see this in society today. Children are pushed to the side, or parents don't want to spend time with them, even though they could, and the children are begging for time spent with them. They want time to be spent with them. They long for it, and you know what a child will do if it can't get positive feedback from an adult or somebody they really like? They're going to act out and show negative behavior, because then, they got your attention. So you want to make sure that you're paying attention to a child when they're doing something right, not just when they're doing something wrong. Because that can lead into that kind of behavior where the only time you give them attention is chewing them out and saying, you just did this, I can't believe you did that. And remember to watch those always and nevers, right? So we also need to learn as much as we can about what true respect is and how to teach it to our children, especially since we live in a society where the concept of respect has changed so dramatically over the years. And now we have suicidal issues with young children, and they're seeing it on social media. They see the violence on social media. They see it in the movies, and they think that that is a way to solve their problems. They actually think that's a way to solve their problem. I'll just hurt myself. I'll hurt somebody else instead. And they choose this as a way to solve a problem. Is that ever a right choice? Never. Never is it. And that's the peaceful solution bases an immoral choice on one that hurts or harms themselves, others, or the environment. So we can always weigh if that's a right or a wrong choice. One thing to keep in mind as you prepare to train your children how to develop a respectful character is that even though certain ideas and behaviors are accepted in our society, it does not mean they are respectable. Okay, so even though society accepts them, they consider them normal, they're common, everybody does it. It's like, remember when I shared last week about that word I used at the dinner table? And my dad said, that is not acceptable in this home. Do not speak that word again. So we set that pace, we set the rules, we set that standard, and then we help our children maintain that same standard. And we do it best by our examples, and then we do it through education. Because my father was very kind to explain to me what the word meant, I had no clue, and how you want to hold yourself to a higher standard. Don't lower yourself down. Keep a high standard for yourself, because you will grow up, children, and one day you're going to have to face the choices you made. And think about it. What memories do you want your family to have of you? And what memories do you want to have of your family members? You know, I grew up with a family of 6. I can tell you all the memories that I have of different people in my family, and we all had different perspectives. We could be doing exactly the same thing and come out with different results because we all process things differently. So you don't know for sure what somebody else is processing in their mind. Think about, what do you want them to think of you when they become an adult and they're going to look back on their childhood and they're going to say, oh yes, I remember my sister. She used to torment me. My sister really did. She did. Okay, I'll share a story. When I was a little girl, she was 3 years older than me, and she would pin me down on the floor and put her legs on my arms so I could not move and tickle me until I cried. So that is my trigger today. If somebody just kind of comes up and gives me a little tickle jab, it just sends me up the wall. But that's my memory. She probably thought, oh, it was so funny watching her. You know, she had a different perspective of it than I did. Of course, my older brother come along and push her off. I was always thankful for that, and I have great memories of my brother that saved my life. So you can see we all have different memories. As we're growing up, what memory do you want your children to have of you, mothers? What memory do you want them to look back on you and say, oh, my mother, she would always take the time to listen to me. She was like a friend to me. She was wonderful. She cared. This is what we can do. We have power right now to build those kind of relationships and build those memories. And always try to keep it on the positive. We all have as our teacher before said, we have our conflicts. We are always going to have conflicts because that means a problem or a disagreement between 2 or more people. Okay, so that's part of life. But in that process of life called problems, disagreements, conflicts, it's all how we choose to handle it. And then what memories we want to hold as we're growing up in our families of those situations. We can turn them around. My family used to also sit around in a big circle and have a long discussion. I was the youngest of 6, and they would sit us around in a big circle. My parents sat us down one day and said, we want a divorce. And all my brothers and sisters and everybody spoke. I don't think I said a word. I was scared. And everybody talked my parents out of divorcing. They never did divorce. But that took communication. That was, why they chose to sit us around and let us all voice it. It was a great thing. But if you don't have that respect for one another and you don't show that care and concern, they would have just gone their other ways. The family would have been split. Everybody would have had their negative thoughts and experiences from that. You see why communication is so important. Let's all work really well on it this week. We're coming to the end of our part here, so we're going to pick up on page 65 next time, 63, sorry, and we'll continue in this section. But remember, pay attention to how you show others respect and really make that concerted effort to go out of your way, no matter what's coming back at you. That's the challenge. To show respect in every situation. Are you willing to try that? And everybody out there listening? Yes? Great. All right then, that'll end our class for tonight. Thank you for coming.